sound?
Hot.
Keep it up.
Ruth.
We need to be in front of our face. Yeah, here.
Ruth, take one.
So, how did you first hear about the situation of the Soviet Jews?
I can't say how I heard about the situation of Soviet Jews because I knew that there were Jews in the Soviet Union, but and I knew that there was great difficulty there, but really knew very, very little about it. And when I came from England, after many years in England, I came to Israel with my husband and 3 children. I came into an absorption center.
Just a second. It's too much, the Soviet Jews.
Before 1970, I knew very, very little about the situation of Soviet Jews. I was living in England for many years, although I was born in Israel. And when I arrived in Israel in March of 1970, knowing that there were Jews in the Soviet Union, knowing that I'm sorry. Can we do it again? Forgive me. Okay, forgive me. Okay. Please forgive me. Okay. I knew very little about Jews in the Soviet Union, very little indeed. First of all, I was living far from Israel. I was living in England and heard very little about it. I knew Jews of silence. And when I arrived in Israel in March of 1970, I couldn't read things in the newspaper. There was censorship at the time on the question of Soviet Jewry. So, I mean, it wasn't something that was common knowledge or that you opened a journal or magazine and you would find a story. So my first exposure was really when I arrived in Beit-Brodetsky, completely by chance, staying there with my husband and 3 children who knew no Hebrew. It was a very unnatural situation because being an Israeli born with Hebrew and everything, to be in an absorption center for new immigrants. But that's where I met the first, I've met...
Sorry, just a second. Let's just do, and that's where I met.
And that's where I met the first activists who came in 1970, 1969, who came from the Soviet Union. And from them, all of a sudden, there was such a wealth of information, you know. You can't even imagine. I mean, first of all, there were people with a real light, a real spark in the eyes, and people with passion and with commitment, and they were telling me about others. So there was such a distance between...
What's happening outside? It's so weird. It's like...
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just tell me where to start.
No, it's fine. So... so they were telling me the difference.
They were...
Just a second. Is this a goal? Sorry. Okay. They were telling me.
They were telling me of their friends behind the iron curtains. Of people who wanted to come to Israel, of people who cared a lot about the Judaism. This was all new to me. And there was such a passion with it and such a feeling of commitment. And they actually transmitted to me, as an Israeli who knew nothing, they transmitted to me this passion, this determination, also the feeling that people there are people who are prepared to take risk because it's so meaningful to them to live a Jewish life, and so meaningful to them to come and live in Israel. It was all new. But don't forget, I was 30 years old, I felt was not here during the Six-Day War, where there was not here. I was far away. And this was really something that engulfed me. It was the passion, the feeling behind it, the personal stories. I was shown pictures, and whereas in the press there was virtually nothing, here in the rooms in the absorption center, it was like a fountainhead of information, personal information about personal lives of people, and about Wolf Zalmanson, about Silvas Zalmanson, about Eddie Kuznetsov, about other people, and I heard it from people who knew them.
How did that affected your life?
Well, I think it affected my life immensely, because I was actually interested in little else, let's put it this way. I got very, very involved. And as I got involved, I wanted to involve others. And to involve others because it seemed so important. It actually seemed to me like the biggest thing that is happening, a huge thing that is happening to the Jewish people. I just felt it. It wasn't something that was irrational that I could explain, but I always used to imagine behind the Iron Curtain, a whole huge tribe of Jewish people, who want to come here and who need the help. And this is how let's put it, until it all was accomplished. It took decades, and it took people from Israel and from all over the world for things to happen. But it affected me very, very deeply on a personal level, and also on my family level, because my family was also very involved.
So, what did you do to make people, to help the awareness? I know you were very active, so can you tell me a little bit about your activities?
First of all, once the censorship was over in Israel, there was a natural interest in the press in Israel about what is happening there and about personal stories. Also from abroad, a flood of journalists came and wanted to, it was all new, and there were, interesting, exciting people, to tell the story.
Sorry. Can you get me some? Do you need water? No. So let's continue from the flood of press.
Mm-hmm. There was a flood of journalists from all over the world who wanted to know what was happening to Jews behind the Iron Curtain. And there were people here, people who were newcomers, personal friends, who also had contact with them and who also believed that the help from abroad would be terribly important in order to get them out. Get them out was like almost a mission impossible at that time. I must explain it. Almost a mission impossible. Just like the dream that they were dreaming, is it a dream that is going to be accomplished, that can be accomplished in our lifetime? The Russian bear was a very big, strong bear in our perception, and it was like, I would call it like fighting a titan, an enormous titan, but in order to overcome this feeling of helplessness, or how small we are in comparison with what is happening in the Soviet Union, it helped to see the people who were so committed. And when June the 15th came, and I heard about the attempted hijacking of the plane.
Can you say,
Sorry.
Can you say, take the plane? Take the plane, should we use take the plane?
Attempt to steal the plane.
Just
So what, not to say attempt?
Wait,
What
no,
I'm
attempt
not
is
saying the word
fine.
hijacking.
Hijacking would have to avoid
Absolutely,
that.
yeah. No, rightly so.
Yeah.
The trouble is,
It's fine.
I was trying to.
I saw that.
No, I didn't.
No.
I'm still from that time. I still feel about the hijacking.
Yes. So why don't
again,
you
start it again.
Attempt to take a plane and,
Yeah.
and flee. Yeah.
Attempt to take. Okay.
So June 15th came.
June 15th came, and I heard the attempt to take the plane. These were already people that I'd seen pictures of. Some of them, I heard about some of them, and of course there was a tremendous also worry about what will happen to them. You know, there was tremendous fear and anxiety. What will happen to them? On the one hand, the other thing was really the issue. Okay. Before attempting to take the plane, there were other activities and very, very important activities. It was done by individuals and they should be recognized. But in order to have the recognition of the world, there had to be something that would like crack the perception. And I think that in many ways this...
Crack the perception, that was fine, and then...
What did I do?
And I think, no, you're fine, it's outside.
Okay.
For some reason they're wrong.
No, even if I did it.
So for instance, no, you're perfect.
Yeah.
So to crack the perception.
To crack the perception of Jews of silence, and to crack the perception that people did not, that it was not so meaningful for them. You know, the Judaism, the Jewish identity, and the will to come to Israel.
So what was different with the Leningrad trial group? Why were they different?
The courage, the fact that they didn't ask for mercy, they declared outright that what they wanted is to go to Israel, and that they're going to do absolutely everything in order to do it. The fact that Silvas Zalmanson said the old words of אם אשכחך ירושלים, if I forget the old Jerusalem, this was so powerful. I mean, it resonated the world over. Mm-hmm.
This was so powerful.
It resonated the world over. And I think after the 6-Day War, there were also a lot of people all over the world who really felt the identification with Israel, and who really wanted to show this identity, and for them also to recognize that there was such a huge number of people who really wanted to be Jewish, simply wanted to be Jewish. This is not something that is a given, that you can even think after so many years of Soviet rule that people would want to be Jewish, and knowing very little about Judaism would identify, and it would be so important for them to have their Jewish identity and the connection to Israel. I think it was the right time for and had an impact the world over.
So there was the death sentence, and now you know obviously also that Golda and Franco meeting was effective. I think you didn't know that at the time. So I'm asking a question to Ruth from 1970.
Yes.
Okay? How did you feel when you heard the death sentence was reduced especially since you were fighting for?
First of all, tremendous relief. Secondly, I did understand that there was a lot of influence of other people, and I felt everything should be done in order to make the world know more that this is a primary thing that we here in Israel can do, is to get the word out to others. And Israeli society really, both in demonstrations, in letter writings, there were lots of people who were very committed. You know, they were not in the forefront, but they were behind, giving a lot of emotional support. And I remember the feeling that everybody wanted to identify with them. Not everybody. A lot of people wanted to identify with them, because there was also other issues that we should not forget.
What were the other issues?
Russian immigrants coming to Israel, putting Villa, Volvo, you know, they were like the human beings are human beings, and sometimes you cannot recognize the greatness because of you are mean, and because you compare little petty things that hurt you, but you are also important. And you are also important. And so it wasn't like one voice in Israeli society, absolutely not. But there were ones who were immensely committed, you know, and also one who had questions, how is it going to affect me?
Did you feel like you sort of maybe did it encourage you to continue to fight? Did it affect you? The fact that the USSR did back down in less than 8 days with the verdicts because of world pressure.
No, I felt by that time so committed and already so involved, even with personal stories, that the people didn't know me, but I already knew, you know, about them, and it gave me a feeling that this is the most important thing that one has to do now, is to get the word out to everybody, whether it's a senator, a congressman, whether it's a parliamentarian, writers, Nobel Prize winners. I mean, this was all a gradual process to do it. It's not so easy. It's easily said, but not so easily done. But I felt that not only that we shouldn't feel helplessness now, we should feel the energy and the commitment and get others to be part of it.
How would you define what I was thinking? Can you define me exactly what you were doing?
I joined the Israel Public Council for Soviet Jewry, which was a public organization, which was established, I think, in 1971, probably 1971, in 71, and I headed the information department, which meant that a lot of the VIPs who were coming to Israel, I not only saw them but introduced them to newcomers in Israel, made sure that whoever would could be of influence we would be in touch with, and of course keeping the contacts beyond that. And it also there was the interest also. And also there was there were important focal points too, you know, like the Austrians, or like later the Dutch people. And I'm not talking, and politically it was from right to left, so it wasn't confined only to a certain group. So if one didn't like the extreme left, or did like the extreme right, this was not important. The important thing was to get everyone's support on this issue, beyond our local politics and beyond any politics.
Do you remember how you found out about Silva's release in 1974?
I was told that Silva was. I was told that Silva was released, and immediately there were preparations of meeting her. And if you only knew how many thousands of people, tens of thousands of people wanted to come to meet her, you know. And it was like she was really a symbol of the heroism. Everyone identified, everyone wanted to be there.
Sorry, Azaka. So, what was Silva? What you were talking about? She was a symbol.
Silva was really a symbol of the heroism the world over. There's no question about it. And when she arrived in Israel, everybody wanted to be there, Israelis and non-Israelis. If you could sell hundreds of thousands of tickets, you would have sold them, because I mean, really everybody wanted to be there. And I met her when she was still at the airport. And when she was still at the airport, and there was an immediate click that I felt. But don't forget, it was not a two-sided thing, because I knew a lot about her. She knew nothing about me. You understand? But I felt immediate click to her. And this is how it started.
I actually know that the first few days, I think the first week, she was staying at your place for a few days?
She was. I was accompanying her. I was accompanying her at the beginning. Also, there was. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
You can say, because I'm the editor.
Okay.
So I will.
No, listen. She's.
And my mom, she's gonna let me or not let me?
No, because I mean.
She's my boss.
Yes, no. The first few days, because she had met your father.
No,
and
because she met.
I had met. Sorry, because she had met her. Sorry about the first few days. There was still hope that maybe she's pregnant, and I was accompanying her. I was accompanying her, and of course, absolutely praying in my heart, you know, that she was. But this was really a woman to woman. I felt that with the heroism and idealism, but the most important, her longing for a baby, you know, was the thing that affected me most, you know, at this stage. And I found it even difficult to tell her that I was expecting a baby again, you know. And this is I felt very bonded to her from the beginning. You know, you have a hero, and you have a person. In Hebrew, you call it basar vadam, flesh and blood. And she was really flesh and blood. And flesh and blood, and wanted her personal life, wanted family life, and this I felt from the beginning.
Did you feel she was just released from prison, but not only the small prison, also the big prison of the USSR, where she was followed all the time, even before she was in prison? Do you think, how was her behavior?
Listen, I think I saw her brave, that she was very brave even with the coping of ordinary life. And don't forget, there was immense pressure on Silva both from press and from and even from me, saying meet this one and meet that one, because I thought it would have an impact on the campaign, and she really needed some time to herself and privacy, which was not always so honored, and so honored because she was like a public. I don't want to say public property, but public property to do something good. But still, a human being needs his own privacy and his own space, and this was balancing all the time, balancing all the time. I think she coped absolutely immensely well.
Could you say, simply because I don't have anyone else to say it, I'm not sure if you know it, but I would still like you to say that in 1974, Silvas Zalmanson was replaced with a Soviet spy,
Yuri Linov, yes.
Can you tell about that?
I don't know much about it, but I know that Silva was exchanged for a spy, Yuri Linov, who was sent on a mission in Israel, and for us it didn't matter. It was Yuri Linov or someone else. We just wanted her out, and we were so grateful that there was someone that one could exchange her for.
Good.
Would exchange him for, I think. It was the wrong thing, no?
No, she was good, right?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah.
It was okay?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's fine.
So, tell me about Silva's hunger strike in the UN.
I know very little about it. I know that she only drank water. I know that it was for 19 days, I think, or 16 days.
Did
16 days.
About it,
16 days, but don't forget I was in Israel and she was in the United States, and there were other people involved. I, on a personal level, was very, very worried for her. Very worried for her that her health would be compromised by this. But I think this hunger strike also did a lot of good to the public awareness. But there's also public awareness, and also there's a woman who has to go through it.
How did you find out about the release of the rest, most of the group? I mean, I know there's the final three, but in 79, on Independence Day.
It wasn't Independence Day.
Almost. It was
Almost. That's right.
But
almost.
I would like to use the Independence Day somehow,
okay.
if you can squeeze it in somewhere.
Okay. Because they were already here for Independence Day.
Yes,
I think,
They were released April 27, and it was like 3 days before the
Yes. Well, I actually found out about the release in a very about the release of. Someone phoned me. I was with my husband in Haifa in a hotel for the first time after many years, and I had 2 little children at home. I had 5 and 2 little ones, so I never had any time off. And we arranged to have this weekend, and as soon as I got into the room, and as soon as I put my head on the pillow, there was a phone call. The mother of Boris Penson got a message from Boris that he was released. Now, I mean, this was just unbelievable. And then within a few hours, it was also about the others. It means another 4, and Butman from the Second Leningrad trial. And I'll tell you something, my room in the hotel where I was turned out into headquarters of press, because it was huge news and everybody wanted to share it. It was huge, huge news. Everybody wanted to share it.
And there were the 3 left. Were you?
No. And then Edward Kuznetsov and
Oh, no, I'm
Dymshits
talking
were.
about Yosef Mendelevich.
No,
and
this was really the. The fact that Yosef Mendelevich was left behind, this was absolutely awful. Absolutely awful.
Can we
that-
start? But there
yeah.
was 3 more.
No, Fyodorov and Moshenko.
Yeah, yeah.
No. Look at the issues. The fact that Yosef Mendelevich and Fyodorov and Moshenko were left behind. This was like a very difficult thing to bear, very. And it was like we didn't do enough. We didn't use influence enough. We did not. Fyodor and Moshenko, they said it was not a Jewish issue. But it was not a Jewish issue. But there were people who were together with them, yes, and the commitment of Fyodor and Moshenko was also very big. It was not going to Israel. It was another question, but there was commitment for them. And of course, Yosef Mendelevich, we also knew his family so well here in Israel, and his mother and sisters, and it was like a very big failure that we could not accomplish it, and maybe we didn't do enough.
And on the other hand, you were celebrating here. Can you mention the fact that you were celebrating the Independence Day with?
Yeah. Look, the whole. Everything is personal. That's a problem. No,
well, how about just
look, it took a few days. When Silva was, I tried to phone Silva. She was in London when your father was, when Edward.
Let's say again. Silva was. I tried to phone Silva. She was.
No, it's too. I'll tell you privately. I'll tell you privately.
Okay, I know the story actually. I know
You
she
do
was
know?
in London. Yeah.
Yeah, and.
But I know. I think.
I
June
went.
Jacobs-
She was with June Jacobs at home.
Uh-huh.
I was in Dr. Hanoch, the brother of Arya Hanoch, was staying with us because he was going to Vienna. So he was staying with me at home, with us at home, and all of a sudden we heard that Edward Kuznetsov and Mark Dymshits will be released. And I ran to tell Israel, Zalmanson, who was in Beit Brodetsky here in Ramat Aviv. So we came, don't forget, there were no mobile phones or anything. So ran and woke, it was like midnight, it was close to midnight, to wake Israel up to tell him the news. And I phoned Silva from a public telephone, in the absorption center, and got to speak to her. This was really, and you know what we spoke about? About the shoes and the clothes. You know, the shoes and the clothes, you know, because always Silva did a lot for her husband, and for the others she did a lot. But she is also a woman, flesh and blood.
She did talk about how much she loves the dresses when she was free.
Yeah, no. It was really the story with Israel was this. I went into. There was a public telephone. You know, there were no mobiles. There was a public telephone. in Bedbrodetsky, and I found, and I begged the international exchange to allow me to phone from there and to put the billing on my house, you know, and to give my home number. And I said, look, here's my home number. My husband is next to me. My home number. I've got a nanny at home called Dorothy, and she'll give you the approval. And they phoned me back, and they phoned me back. I said, fine, Dorothy is asleep, but your son, Dudu, gave the approval. He was 4 years old. You know, so for me it was like everything. And he gave the approval that I'll speak to Silva on the phone.
I remember Dudu and Yael.
And I remember, Dudu, how excited he was when you were born.
But I'm not in the film. So. In what way do you feel the Leningrad trial affected the world today and maybe Israel? בראייה לאחור, זאת אומרת, בעבר.
In retrospect, I think the Leningrad trial gave the push, or started the crack, and gave also people hope and energy to carry on the very difficult tasks, because a lot of people had to battle for a very long time. Knew his family so well here in Israel, and his mother and sisters, and it was like a very big failure, that we could not accomplish it, and maybe we didn't do enough.
And on the other hand, you were celebrating here. Can you mention the fact that you were celebrating the Independence Day with?
Yeah. Look, the whole. Everything is personal. That's a problem. No.
Well, how about just
look, it took a few days. When Silva was, I tried to phone Silva. She was in London when your father was, when Edith, sorry, when Edward.
Let's say again. Silva was. I tried to phone Silva. She was.
No, it's too. I'll tell you privately. I'll tell you privately.
Okay, I know the story actually. I know
you
she
do
was
know?
in London. Yeah.
Yeah, and.
But I know. I think.
She was with June Jacobs at home.
Uh-huh.
I was in Dr. Hanoch, the brother of Arya Hanoch, was staying with us because he was going to Vienna. So he was staying with me at home, with us at home, and all of a sudden we heard that Edward Kuznetsov and Mark Dymshits will be released, and I ran to tell Israel, Zalmanson, who was in Bedbrodetsky here in Ramat Aviv. So we came. Don't forget, there were no mobile phones or anything. So ran and woke. It was like midnight. It was close to midnight to wake Israel up to tell him the news, and I found Silva from a public telephone, in the absorption center, and got to speak to her. This was really, and you know what we spoke about? About the shoes and the clothes. You know, the shoes and the clothes, you know, because always Silva did a lot for her husband, and for the others she did a lot. But she is also a woman, flesh and blood.
She did talk about how much she loves the dresses when she was free.
Yeah, no. It was really the story with Israel was this. I went into, there was a public telephone. You know, there were no mobiles. There was a public telephone in Beit Brodetsky, and I found and I begged the international exchange to allow me to phone from there and to put the billing on my house, you know, and to give my home number. And I said, look, here's my home number. My husband is next to me. My home number. I've got a nanny at home called Dorothy, and she'll give you the approval. And they phoned me back, and they phoned me back. I said, fine, Dorothy is asleep, but your son, Dudu, gave the approval. He was 4 years old. You know, so for me it was like everything. And he gave the approval that I'll speak to Silva on the phone.
I remember Dudu and Yael.
And I remember Dudu how excited he was when you were born.
But I'm not in the film. So. In what way do you feel the Leningrad trial affected the world today and maybe Israel? בראייה לאחור, זאת אומרת, בהבנה.
In retrospect, I think the Leningrad trial gave the push or started the crack and gave also people hope and energy to carry on the very difficult tasks, because a lot of people had to battle for a very long time, to struggle for a very long time because of giving applications to come to Israel, and there were other prisoners of Zion, and I feel that it gave, on the one hand, the feeling that there is hope, and somehow, and also there was a very big Jewish movement already, international, that was committed to see it through. And the Jewish movement grew also into lots of non-Jews who were supporting, and I think it started rolling the ball in a direction like this. Also, it became an issue that was discussed already in the highest level. So because a situation like this needs a lot of levels. It needs the level of the grassroots, of the students, of the public, of the general public, but it also needs the top people who can make the decisions, and I think it had a tremendous impact.
Thank you. Brian, do you have any questions?
Yep, two things. We don't have anybody saying the Jews of silence were, who were the Jews of silence, and then also the prisoners of Zion, because everybody keeps referencing them, but we don't have...
no, we have Zelda saying that.
I would like it again.
Okay, sure,
just in
no
case.
problem.
Okay.
Because I don't think
Just
we do.
ask me the...
So I'll ask you,
just ask me the question.
So can you define what the Jews of silence mean, and can you start with the Jews of silence are?
The Jews of silence were the Jews behind the Iron Curtain, who were there after Second World War, and who were not allowed to identify with their religion and Jewish nationality, although it was written Jewish in their identity card, and we were not allowed to go out of the Soviet Union. We're not allowed to have contact with the their fellow Jews and others outside the Soviet Union, and they were considered the Jews of silence because they could not live a Jewish life at all. No Jewish culture could not and could not voice their protest. And the contrast then between the Jews of silence, in Hebrew Yahadut Adama, and what happened later, which was such a heroic movement, you know, was tremendous. Didn't answer?
That was beautiful.
Yes.
Also, can you define prisoners of Zion?
Yeah. Prisoners of Zion were people who were imprisoned because they wanted to live a Jewish life and go to Israel. Israel is Zion. And this was a symbolic thing, prisoners of Zion. Needless to say that prisoners of conscience are highly valued for the fact that they want to fight for their liberty. Prisoners of Zion, it was confined to the people who really wanted to lead a Jewish life, live a Jewish life, and go to Zion. And I want to mention here Wolf Zalmanson, you know, how he said about what it meant to him to go what it meant to him to be a Jew, and what it meant to him to go to Israel. It was like the mashma'ut, like the meaning of life itself, you know. And for some people, this was really the meaning of life itself. They struggled to go to Zion, to Israel.
Thank you.
Did it answer?
That was a beautiful answer.